Hello and welcome. My name is Roshan Rana, and today I'm presenting my professional curriculum and pedagogical philosophy statement. My philosophy is grounded in the belief that early childhood education is a transformative, relational, inclusive, and ethically grounded profession. I believe that educators have an important responsibility not only to support children's learning and development, but also to create environments where every child feels valued, respected, included, and capable of contributing. At the center of my philosophy is my image of the child as a rich, capable, confident, and agentic citizen from birth. Children are not passive recipients of information or empty vessels waiting to be filled with knowledge. Instead, they actively construct and co construct knowledge through relationships, play, exploration, communication, and meaningful experiences. I believe each every child brings their own strengths, interest, cultural background, experiences, and ways of understanding the world. Therefore, my role as an educator is not simply to provide information. My role is to listen, observe, question, encourage, scaffold, and create opportunities for children to express their ideas and make decisions about their learning. My professional values are particularly grounded in relational ethics, equity, cultural humility, inclusion, and social justice. These values influence how I communicate with children, families, colleagues, and the wider community. I understand communi- I understand curriculum as much more than a written program or a list of learning outcomes. Curriculum is a living and dynamic process that includes children's experiences, relationships, interactions, environments, routines, play opportunities, and intentional teaching. Pedagogy is therefore the way I consciously enact my beliefs through teaching. It involves the decisions I make about environments, relationships, resources, interactions, and learning experiences. Ultimately, my goal is to uphold every child's right to belong, become, and being. Let's move forward the part two, theoretical foundations and curriculum continuum. My pedagogical approach is informed by social constructivist, ecological, and critical perspectives. Firstly, Vygotsky sociocultural theory strongly influenced my understanding of children's learning. From this perspective, learning occurs through social interaction and within cultural context. Children develop knowledge through relationships with educators, peers, families, and communities. This means I do not see myself as only the source of knowledge in the classroom. Instead, I see learning as something that can be co constructed. For example, when children are investigating water, building with blocks, or exploring natural materials, I can extend their thinking through questions, discussion, modeling, and shared problem solving. Bronfenbrenner ecological system theory also influences my philosophy. It reminds me that the children's development doesn't happen in isolation. Children are influenced by their families, communities, cultures, educational settings, and wider social environments. Therefore, meaningful relationships with families are essential to for my practice. Families possesses valuable knowledge about their children, and I believe educators should work collaboratively with families rather than making assumptions about children's experience. My curriculum approach can also be understood through three important continuums. The first is predetermined to emergent curriculum. I value emergent curriculum because it responds to children's interest, questions, strengths, and emerging ideas. However, emergent curriculum doesn't mean that educators simply follow children without direction. I believe it requires intentional observation, documentation, planning, and thoughtful educator intervention. The second continuum is segregated to integrated learning. I believe young children's learning is holistic. For example, when children build a tower, they make simultaneously develop mathematical understanding, language, fine motor skills, social skills, problem solving skills, and confidence. The third continuum is disconnected to connected learning with nature. I value outdoor and land based learning because nature provides rich opportunities for sensory exploration, physical development, inquiry, creativity, and sustainability learning. I also recognize the importance of respecting First Nations perspectives, particularly children's relationships with country, community, culture, and responsibility for the natural environment. And the third part is pedagogical enactment and teaching practices. To bring my philosophy into practice, I use a flexible and responsive repertoire of teaching strategies. I place strong value on play based learning because play provides children with opportunities to explore ideas, develop relationships, solve problems, communicate, task risk, and express themselves. However, play based learning doesn't mean that educators are passive. I believe effective educators carefully observe children's play and decide when to step back and when to become actively involved. One important strategy I use that is sustained shared thinking. During children's play, I can enter their learning space and engage in meaningful dialogue by asking open-ended questions, listening carefully, offering suggestions, and encouraging children to explain their thinking. For example, if children are constructing a bridge with blocks, instead of immediately showing them how to build it, I might ask, what do you think will happen if we make a base wider? Or how could we make the bridge stronger? These questions encourage children to investigate and develop their own solution while maintaining their agency. At other times, explicit teaching is necessary. For example, when children are learning to use tools, I may demonstrate how to use equipment safely. Similarly, during a conflict between children, I may explicitly model language for expression emotions, negotiations, and resolving problems. Therefore, I do not believe that one teaching strategy is appropriate for every situation. Effective pedagogy requires educators to understand the individual child and make intentional decisions based on their needs, interest, development, and context. Another central commitment within my philosophy is inclusive and anti-biased practice. Inclusion is not something that is added to the curriculum after planning has occurred. Instead, inclusion should be embedded into entire learning environment. I aim to provide flexible materials, multiple ways of participating, accessible environments and opportunities for children to communicate in different ways. This is consistent with the principles of universal design for learning, where barriers to participate are considered during the planning process. My goal is for children with disabilities, neurodivergent children, children from culturally and linguistically diverse backgrounds, and all other children to participate with dignity, agency, and a genuine sense of belonging. Let's move to the part 4, alignment with early years learning framework and Australian professional standards for teachers. My professional philosophy is strongly aligned with the early years learning framework as well as the Australian professional standards for teachers. The EYLF provides an important framework for understanding children's learning, development, identity, relationships, and well being. My philosophy supports all five EYLF learning outcomes. Outcome 1, it focuses on children developing a strong sense of identity. I support this by creating secure relationships and encouraging children to express their individual identities, strengths, cultures, and perspectives. Outcome 2 relates to children being connected with and contributing to their world. This connects strongly with my commitment to community, culture, sustainability, family partnerships, and respect for country. Outcome 3 focuses on children's well-being. I support well-being through safe environments, responsive relationships, physical activity, emotional support, and opportunities for children to develop self-regulation. Outcome 4 focuses on confident and involved learners. This aligns closely with my belief in inquiry, play, experimentation, problem solving, and children's agency. Finally, outcome 5 focuses on effective communication. I support this through conversations, storytelling, dramatic play, literacy experiences, visual communication, and opportunities for children to communicate in ways that meaningful to them. My philosophy also aligns with the EYLF principle and practices, particularly secure and respectful relationship, partnerships with families, inclusion, cultural responsiveness, sustainability, play-based learning, intentionality, and critical reflection. The Australian Professional Standard for Teachers also provide an important professional framework. Standard 192 relate to professional knowledge. I need to understand children and how they learn, as well as the content and teaching strategies that support effective learning. Standard 3, 4, and 5 relate to professional practice. This includes planning and the implementing effective learning experiences, creating safe and inclusive environments, and using assessment and documentation to understand and extend the children's learning. Finally, standards 6 and 7 relate to professional engagement. As an educator, I have a responsibility to engage in ongoing professional learning, critical reflection, collaboration, and respectful partnerships with families, colleagues, and the wider community. Therefore, these frameworks do not simply provide requirements that educator must follow. They help guide my professional decision making and provide a foundation for ethical and accountable practice. And my professional commitment. My professional curriculum and pedagogical philosophy is based on the belief that every child is capable, competent, unique, and deserving of respect and meaningful participation. I understand curriculum as an evolving process that responds to child's interests, strengths, identities, relationships, and communities. I understand pedagogy as the intentional way I bring these beliefs into practice through relationships, environments, play, teaching, strategies, observation, assessments, and reflection. My theoretical foundation, particularly socio-cultural and ecological perspective, remind me that children's learning is shaped by relationships and environments. My commitment to play-based, inclusive, culturally responsive, and intentional pedagogy guides how I interact with children and design learning opportunities. For me, early childhood education is not simply about preparing children for school, it is about recognizing children as citizens in the present and creating environments where they can belong, being, and become. Thank you for listening my presentation.